Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business of Business podcast. I'm your host, Roy. Of course, on our podcast, we bring you a wide variety of guests that can talk about a diverse set of topics. Some things we introduce may be new. Some things we introduce you may already have on your radar, and we give you professionals that can, give you a helping hand and maybe help you through some troubled times. And, we want to see success for all businesses for sure. So today is no different. Today we have Jeannie Doherty. She runs a strategic bookkeeping practice called Cloud9 Strategic, and she is on the beautiful Gold Coast of Australia. Jeannie, we want to welcome you today. Jeannie has a unique business background, having been raised by a high-profile successful retail entrepreneurs. She was privileged to attend the School of Hard Knocks and learn from the ground up what it takes to truly scale a business. Jeannie has dedicated herself to product innovation in her industry, to develop methodologies with foundation in numbers to help her clients transform their businesses from surviving to thriving. Jeannie's niche is working dads, primarily trades and services, and because of this, she's passionate about the impact her work can have on families. Helping families thrive is what gets her out of bed in the morning. Personally, Jeannie is a proud mom. And mom, let me rephrase it. In Australia. She's a proud mom, lover of Latin dance, and an advocate for putting your health first. Jeannie, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to be with us. I certainly do appreciate it.
Thank you, Roy. I'm very excited to be here and share something of value with everyone.
Yeah, of course. And, we don't talk enough about finance. And we had a conversation leading up, in the before the show to that, most people put a lot of focus on marketing and sales, and we kind of don't talk about the back end until things go horribly wrong, unfortunately, a lot of times. But before we kick off into that, yeah, tell us a little bit about, growing up and having being in an entrepreneurial family, and just, kind of how you ended up here in this space.
Yeah, so yes, bit of a unique background. So my parents were, so we started out quite poor, like many people. So when I came along, yeah, we didn't have much money. So they worked very hard and they built a retail business that slowly evolved into, I guess, what became, a really successful venture. They had it a long time. They actually did sell their business twice. There's a whole story behind that, which involves
that's always
intellectual property and the reason you should register it, right? So
Exactly.
They managed to get one of their businesses after selling it for millions back to the cost of a IP registration. So that's another cool story. And so then second time around with them when I was older, they restarted their retail enterprise. And in this case, they were hoping it would be just a nice little retirement venture. But their marketing campaign worked so well that we had to decide if we would leave it where it was, 10 million turnover, or grow it to $100 million turnover with the goal of selling it to a public company. And we did that. And my job was I was the cleanup girl. So as they rolled out this $100 million company, I went around behind them, fixing everything and cleaning everything up. And it was so much fun because it was lots of problem solving. And if I'm not problem solving, then I am rocking in a corner. So that is really my background. And then because I had done all things business, I was really involved in finance in that business as well. So heavily into the finance department. So then when I decided I'll have a child. And I thought, you know what, bookkeeping, that's going to be flexible. It's going to work around my child when he comes along. And I thought every business needs great numbers work, right? So this will be perfect. But I have to say, I never knew how much I would love it.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's such a good thing to be, brought up in that entrepreneurial spirit, and, being able to see and be involved in that growth. I think that's an awesome story.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I do feel privileged, and I got to see, do you know what? I got to see the wonderful side of it, and I got to see the dark side of it.
Yeah.
My parents were very successful in terms of money. Was the cost too high? Yes, it probably was. So these days, I love to help business owners chase what I call the prosperity synergy, and that is time, money, and freedom.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Like we kind of said in the lead in that, so many new businesses, especially, it's just the focus, sales, marketing, and nobody really thinks about the back end and taking care of the money that we're bringing in the door. And there's so many reasons for that. But that's kind of, I think what you have built your practice on is kind of helping people to realize that, unfortunately, with you, it's the same with others. You usually don't get called in until things have gone bad.
Yes, it's true. And so that is definitely one of my favorite misconceptions. So, focusing on sales and revenue, and sales and revenue is really, really important. But my mum used to have a little joke. She would say, anybody can sell something for nothing. And let me explain what I mean by that when it comes down to the numbers. And this is so important. This little piece of information can save or make you money immediately. So, we go out, we're focusing on sales and revenue, but how are we going in terms of cost of sales? How are we going in terms of collecting the money after we sell something? And so,
If we collect it.
if we collect it, right? And there's another saying around that, and that is that revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king.
Love that.
Yeah, and the time that and I find when I meet a lot of business owners, they're often hunters, and look, I'm a natural hunter as well. So in terms of sales, we're a hunter or a farmer, and hunters, we want the next kill, we want the next sale, and it does make us feel great, right? There's a reason we say revenue is vanity, but what we find is, and what I see is, that business owners are often talking about all the sales they're making, but if I look at the financials, it's not translating into the bottom line. Yeah. And sometimes they might be aware of that and they want to bury their head in the sand rather than face up to it and do some meaningful work to fatten up that bottom line.
Yeah, and being a numbers guy, that's kind of always my answer when people tell you, yeah, I've got a $25 million company, or we got 25 million revenue, and sometimes I don't say it. If it's somebody friendly, I may, but I'm always like, well, that really doesn't tell us much, because if it costs you 50 million in order to get 25 million in revenue, we're upside down, and it's really not a business. It's more of a charity or a giveaway. And
yes.
And the other part of that is we talked about is, I don't know how people price products, goods, services, whatever they're selling, because if you're not watching your numbers and don't keep up on what is that, like you said, the cost of sales, what is that? How do we know where our price points, and then how do we know our markup to get our correct margins? It's hard to figure all that stuff out.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And look, I work with a lot of service businesses, and small businesses primarily are service-based. And so the pain points that we see are definitely cost of sales, so job costing, wages, because that's your other cost of sales, even in hospitality, wages. So those two things are the main pain points that I see that need deep work done to improve them. And with regard to that, it's also business owners not understanding numbers wise what optimal business performance looks like. So in terms of, so we're out chasing sales, and maybe we're not thinking about cost of sales. And even if we did look at our cost of sales and we go, well, it is what it is. I charge $100 for this. I pay my staff member $30. That seems okay to me. But there are industry benchmarks, right? Everywhere that you are, doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can easily access industry benchmarks. For us in Australia, that's available on our taxation website. It takes 2 seconds. And then let's say you're a plumber, you're able to have a look at what plumbers are doing on average. Okay, so what is the average cost of sales for a plumber, and how are you in comparison to them? So that numbers work, it is also about understanding, well, what does optimal business performance look like for me?
Yeah. Yeah. And, here in the US, I know we have a lot of large associations for different industries. And, one that I was in, worked in for a long time was the senior living industry. And we had two or three very good sources of, what we called benchmarks. They could talk to you about everything from, what they're paying in property tax to real estate to general and administrative, labor. And it's good. It's a good check mark. And, we every business that you work with, when you first roll out benchmarking, it's like the standard answer is, well, we're different, we're all different. It's like, well, you're all different, but you're all the same. And the benchmark is not it's not something what it does, it helps us to define if you're close or not. And if you're not, if there's an explanation for it, just like some people would use a dietary, the food component for marketing, they'd have dinners and this and that. But yeah, those dollars should probably be flown over into the marketing budget. But it really helps you determine, are we way off in some areas? And if we are, investigating why to see if it's appropriate or inappropriate.
Yes, yes. And it's interesting, I listen to what you say, Roy, and I tend to, like, I want to challenge your listeners to, you were saying a lot about business there, but if we really listen, it's all about the numbers, right? And I like to say your numbers are like the slab of your house. They are the absolute foundation. And with regard to those benchmarks, exactly, they're not everything, but yes, business industries are same. There are variables, but they are same. And so just to elaborate on that a little bit for anyone who doesn't fully understand what we are talking about there, so one that I would tend to point out is something we call the rule of thirds. So let's say you're a service-based business like myself, so bookkeepers, accountants, consultants, to a large extent trades as well. The rule of thirds is a beautiful benchmark rule you can work on. And that is that, so we have our turnover. You should have a third for cost of sales, a third for operational expenses, including your wages, and then a third is left for profit. And if you can work towards that and get that right over time, then what you have is your business has turned into an investment. And the other thing that I want to mention about benchmarks is it's all about all of your expenses as a percentage of turnover. So that's how you use a benchmark. So for example, rent as a percentage of turnover. So let's say you have a factory, you might find that the industry benchmark, so the average that people are paying for a factory in your kind of industry is 6% of their turnover. So if you're paying 8%, then that seems okay. If you're paying 4%, yay, you're winning. If you're paying 15% and you're wondering where all the profit's going, this is where the gold of benchmarks is. So don't be afraid of it being something. If you're only a little business, if you're a one-man band, or if you've got 10 staff or 100 staff, don't be afraid that you can't use this even if you're small.
Yeah, and the other thing, kind of going along with that, is you talked about wages earlier. Is that there are a lot, not a lot. Let's say there are people that I have dealt with in the past that if they paid their employee $20 an hour, that is all that they would build in. If they were sending their person out to your house, they'd say, "Oh, I paid this guy 20. I'm going to send him to you. You pay me 20, and we're covering our costs." But number one, especially in the States, there's all kinds of employment costs that go along with that, which, the 20 depends on your benefit structure and a lot, but your $20 an hour employee can then turn into a $30 to $35 hours, easy. But then we also have to put our profit margin on top of that. And I don't want to get off into the weeds, but just think about, there's a lot more that goes into this. And this is why we have to know, like you said, build our numbers as the foundation of our house, because this is how we know how to price our goods and services based on all of these inputs.
Yes, exactly. And that's, yeah, this is the kind of thing we see all the time. And the only way you know is to look at the numbers. And it's not about, so the other thing to know is that you don't need to look at the numbers and get this right on day one. I say to all of my clients, so we are on day one of a 365-day journey. And today we're going to get started. And I don't operate like a high-end accountant. I love to be real. And I tend to say, let's get into the numbers. Let's be vulnerable. Let's not expect to have all the answers. Let's scratch our heads. Let's get dirty in the numbers and just start putting one foot in front of the other. Because if we do that, we are going to get somewhere. We're going to move forward. Whereas if we stand still and do nothing, where are we going to go?
Yeah. Yeah. And, in the States, sometimes we have this idea that, well, our taxes are due on April 15th generally. So we think, oh, we just need to talk to the bookkeeper March 10th, March 15th. We take the shoebox full of receipts and dump out, and we just think about the taxable component of getting the stuff done to pay the taxes and move on. But I think what you said is right, is that, these are conversations. If we want to get it right, these are conversations that are throughout the year. Maybe they become a little bit more intense around tax time to get that done. But, the planning and everything, it's not, plan once and forget it. It's like, this has got to be something that's constant, because, as you go from June to July to August, did wages spike? Do you need to change your pricing structure because of that? What else is going on in the business, that we have to monitor and set up KPIs to be very diligent about looking at.
Yes, exactly. And that's, I only engage with clients who are engaged. Well, we keep everything up to date weekly, for example. And I recommend that whether you're doing it yourself or having it done for you, that you absolutely, so there are 5 parts to my numbers system. And with Numbers 101, that is up-to-date, accurate accounting records. And that's up to date weekly. If you can't keep it up to date weekly, talk to someone and find out what it's going to look like for them to do it. Because the money that you spend in this area, you can turn into an investment. Okay, we see clients get 5 to 10 times return on their money. And often that's early on. It's not unusual for me to sit with someone for an hour and save them $100,000 in that hour. Kindergarten stuff for me, right? But they needed somebody to shine the light on the numbers. Could I run their business for them? Absolutely not. They're the expert in their business. But I can shine a light and I can show them what they need to see to make the decisions they need to make to save or make money. And so Numbers 101, up-to-date, accurate accounting records, you need to get that done. And I was only thinking the other day, when it comes to accounting and bookkeeping, nothing has changed. Double entry accounting is double entry accounting. It's actually the same today as it was 100 years ago. But the difference is that now we actually have amazing AI, artificial intelligence apps that will do it all for us. So if you treat Numbers 101 like baking a cake, and that is, you need the recipe, you need the ingredients, and you need the timing, right? Then it can actually be really, really easy. So what I'm going to say about that is one of the main rules there is, please don't mix your business and personal expenditure within your business bank accounts. If you get that right, then the rest will flow a lot easier. Then get yourself some really nice tech, leverage the heck out of it, and get the tech doing most of that Numbers 101 job.
Yeah, and you were talking about, you developed this Numbers 101 for your clients and for others to help them out. But you said there are 5 major components. I guess one is the up to date, and then the number 2, or maybe not in this order, but the second one would be to separate your business and your personal, to make sure there's a delineation. And that, again, let me just say, not from experience, thank goodness, but that is one of the things that will get you in trouble the fastest here, because what if they notice a little thing, then it makes them want to look for bigger things, and so sometimes that leads to trouble. So it's much easier, and you may save a few dollars by trying to run this expense through the business, but let me just say, it's not worth it. It's not worth it for the price that you end up paying, if you get caught doing that.
Yes, and it's not like a success strategy is tax evasion anyway.
Exactly.
Good success strategies are around sales and marketing, cost of sales, all those things. But I've never met a business owner that says I made my fortune in tax fraud. So, and live to tell the tale. So yeah, look, once you numbers one, and the thing, look, I'm really passionate about numbers 101. And if you're thinking to yourself, oh, but I'm so busy, I'm going to challenge you and say, if you want to run a successful business, there is no successful business owner that doesn't know and use their numbers. And the other thing around numbers 101, if you're going to say, oh yeah, but my business and personal accounts are kind of mixed at the moment because I'm busy and I don't really want to do this and that, I would say come back to the cake. So if you're going to bake a cake and you choose to use the wrong ingredients and you choose not to follow the recipe and you choose to leave it in the oven for half the time, we're not going to get the cake. So numbers 101 is easy as long as you're willing to lean in and follow the recipe and make it easy. And from there, once you've got that foundation in place, you can start to be able to move on to numbers knowledge. It's our second step, where you can start to get educated around what it all means. So the head scratching part of it. From there, once you start to have those aha moments and understand what it all means, you can move on to getting those numbers to be more strategic. And what I mean by that is it might be that once your numbers are in order, we were to look at your profit and loss and we were to establish, okay, well, you might scratch your head and say, cost of sales, right? Well, my wages are actually cost of sales. If we put those numbers up into the cost of sales area, that's when you're getting strategic, because when you get those numbers looking right, when you're strategic around the placement of them, you are ready to set targets. And once you've set your targets, which come from the benchmarks that we talked about, then you're ready to monitor your targets. And that is, okay, my target or my budget or my KPI, these are all the same things, because sometimes this terminology can be a bit like, so these are all the same. What did I want to do in sales? What should my cost of sales be? Once you have those targets and you come back to the financials at the end of the month, you can say, okay, well, this was my target. What was my actual? What's the gap in between? And what do I need to do to get my actual closer to my target? Boom, you've got an action plan. So I want to help everyone see that it's not as hard as it might seem.
Yeah. And we don't have to make it an avalanche. Like you said earlier, this is I guess it's a lifelong project for the business. And so we can start putting in little changes. We can investigate, if we find differences in these benchmarks in different areas, we can investigate the reasons why and start bringing them more in line. And so again, it's not just, we're going to do this once and have a consultation and send you off and life will be good. Especially yourself, you will work with your clients all through the year to not only keep, let's get on track, but then keep them on track as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You really need to be engaging in those numbers regularly to make the decisions that you need to make. And that is, that's a combination of things. So we sat down with a client, or a client came to me a little while ago, and she said she really wants to invest in administration help, but she's nervous. And so that was just a matter of sitting down and so her virtual CFO on our team sat down with her, had a look at the numbers, and because we do everything in a very realistic, relevant way, and this is a small business, I call it, let's do some back of the napkin stuff. So we run the numbers. We do what we would call a what if analysis. Again, a fancy term, but it means, what if I hired an admin? what would happen to my profit, right? Okay, this is what will happen probably over the next few months. And then, but we know that if you can leverage that and you're employing these new people, then you will be able to get this because you told us your demand is this. So that's that client said, without us looking at the numbers with her and shining that light and helping her to make a decision, she would not have employed that administrator. She would have stayed still. She wouldn't have moved forward. And the truth is that she shouldn't have hired an administrator before she looked at the numbers, because you do need to make sure that you can afford these things, that it's viable. Do we need to go and get some more capital? So it's really important to be looking at your numbers on a regular basis and usually getting somebody to help you, even if that's a little mastermind group that you've formed and you're holding each other accountable, but getting someone to help you.
Yeah. A few keywords that you said through that is, delegation and the virtual CFO. But I want to talk about that for a minute. Sometimes that we think we can't afford to hire people, but then we also have to take the look at, for whatever time that frees me up, is it worth it in my personal life? Is it something I could take that time and focus more on sales, marketing, production, other things that are out there? So, it's typically it is a good trade-off to be able to delegate and get you some help. But, the other thing is, especially with people just starting out in businesses, that we, I'll say this because I've done it in the past, is, we feel like we have to do everything. We have to touch everything. And we don't think about for a minute that, if you're good at sales or you're good at marketing, or if you're like the production guy, then that's what you need to focus on, where your skills or talents. Just because you're find yourself in business or being an entrepreneur doesn't mean that you have to perform each and every task of this business. So sometimes it makes sense to look to see if you can find that numbers guy, if you can find that person. And, and a lot of people like, we're small, we're grown, can't afford it. But now, like you mentioned, we have virtual and fractional, where you don't have to pay for this person's entire salary for their year. You get them for the little bits and pieces that you need them through the year.
Yes, exactly. And that's exactly right. So if you're a business and you're interested in scaling, and scaling is different to growing. So growing is traditionally just growing that revenue, but scaling, it is so much more. Scaling is also, so I'm all about scale. And about 5 or 6 years into starting my business, I was successful in getting it to a point where I call it, I could just pop it on autopilot. I could work a few hours a week, take lots of time off, and the business ran without me. So that is scaling. But the only way you're going to scale is to leverage those things. So in terms of, like, when I talked about setting those numbers targets and monitoring those targets, when you get to my favorite part, which is action planning and then taking that meaningful action, the action that you take. So let's say you've looked at the numbers and you've looked at your targets, and let's say you're 3 or 4 months in and you've established with your virtual CFO, and bear in mind, virtual CFO can be as little as $50 a week. Like, this doesn't have to be a high-end accountant. So let's say you've established, you know what, there's some more money that we could spend on some other things. The action that you take when you look at the budget versus actual, I like to say, is always in 5 areas. So it's around planning, team, marketing, selling, or your standards. And I'll give you an example of that. So let's say we've looked at the numbers and we've gone, do you know what? We're just not hitting those turnover targets. We're not hitting those turnover targets. What action do we need to take? And you talk about the business and you say, well, and I'll give you a couple of examples. Well, we're really not generating enough leads. Well, generating leads is marketing. That's what it is. Okay, well, if we're not generating enough leads, what do we need to do? Okay, we probably need to go into planning mode, because everything needs to be planned, even if it's on a napkin, even if it's 10 minutes, right? It doesn't need to be grand. You just need to sit down with a pen and paper, come up with a plan. and then swing into marketing. So you can see how that action is taken. Another example might be where we go, okay, the sales are low, but what we've established is the business owner, as you were saying, Roy, maybe they love being the technician, but they don't love doing the sales and they're avoiding it. So then we're going to swing into some action around team. Again, we're going to go back to planning, and then we might be, I think we need to bite the bullet and look at getting, someone part-time. I call it a sales mum. I love mums, they're the best workforce. And so we're going to take action around team. So to scale our business, we are going to need to dig in and recruit people, find suppliers. And the other thing is, I like to say about scale, personally, I don't like to grow my business in a manner where I couldn't replace myself. So anything I do, I ask myself right at the beginning, how can I make sure that this is a job that I could hand off to someone? If it's all about me, I can't scale it. I can't scale myself out of the business.
Right. Yeah. And gets back to planning too, is that, you have to think about in the beginning, it's a tough conversation, and it's good to speak with other people, other trusted advisors, to have this conversation is, do you want to grow this business? Do you want to scale the business? Because if you do, these things need to be part of that strategic plan. We can't wait until, it's Monday where you're at, it's still Sunday night where I'm at, but I can't wake up in the morning and be like, wow, I really need to add a marketing person, 2 salespeople, and a fractional CFO. And it's like, we need to think about, well, what's going to trigger these things? When does it outgrow me? When does it outgrow the staff that we currently have? So we can be proactive. And so we're not scrambling, because, kind of on the recruiting and the hiring side, is we want to make the best possible hires that we can, or even if we're bringing in fractional people, we want to get a good match for ourselves. So these are things that we need to have some lead time on.
Yeah, look, for me, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I'm in a small business, so I do planning in a realistic, on the fly way, but I plan. And it is constant with clients where I get them and they say, oh, I'm going to do this. And they're usually quite down when they go, oh, I'm going to try this. And I say, no, we haven't made a plan. And a good example with that might be, let's say I get someone come in, and this is a real story. So oh, Jeannie, I don't have enough leads, so I'm just going to do Google AdWords. So that's an example of you've jumped in the middle without a plan. And like I say, even if that's a little plan. So I might say, okay, you're going to do Google AdWords. So what happens when the phone rings? And John might say, I don't know. What happens when the phone rings, Jeannie? And I say, well, do you answer the phone? No, probably not, because I'm too busy. And I say, okay, so they probably ring somebody else for that service, because that's how AdWords works. Yeah. Oh, okay. And then and it's like, okay, and also let's say you're an air conditioning installer. We're in September. Aren't you about to get really busy? Oh, yeah, I am. Okay. And so let's talk capacity. So just that. And that day we spent an hour with my big whiteboard, and we just wrote a whole lot of stuff down. And at the end of it, he said, I'm not going to do Google AdWords. And after we did a lot of, mini plans and constant planning on the go, his first real marketing campaign ended up, rather than spending money on something that probably wasn't going to work, when we dug in and understood the business, I got him to do what I love. It's called the KIP marketing, keep in touch. So I said, you've got this database, right? How about we do manners marketing, where we reach out and we say, hi, Sally, just checking in to see how your air conditioning's going. And that no-cost marketing campaign got him lots of business and lots of PR. So plan.
And just a couple things, like not to get off the track into marketing, but that follow-up component, the people that we already know, we tend to always overlook them, and we think we need to always be covering new ground. And I think there's a lot of sales opportunity, in these leads, even if they're happy and everything is good, do you know of somebody that may be having air condition troubles that you may want to refer to us? And then on the other part of that, their business, this is hard to understand, but there are businesses that have gone out of business because they had too much business. And, like you said, he, starts this Google campaign and the phone's ringing, nobody's there to answer. And then it starts getting in Yelp and all these other places about, how this person never answers their phone and they can't deliver. And it can be as bad as not having any business.
Well, exactly. And the way that it relates to the numbers is that I mean, as you know, I'm a strategic bookkeeper, right? So all these conversations start in the numbers. They don't. And when Paul went, I'm going to do AdWords, he didn't start in the numbers. If I'm looking at the numbers and I'm truly thinking about Paul's business here, an air conditioning business, we're coming up to summer, I'm looking at the numbers, I know you panicked because winter was really quiet. So all these conversations start in the numbers. But I also love, Roy, what you said then, like keeping it simple. People will go and think, I'll do AdWords before they do the simple things, But yeah, all these conversations definitely start in the numbers, because that's where we see what's happening in the business.
And then the second part is, if you would have gone ahead and gone with the AdWords, is we need to set up monitoring. How much are you spending? How much are we bringing in? What is after a few months, 6 months, whatever, is it really even paying off? Is it what we need to do? But then we get into a lot of other things, like we have to ask our clients, where did you hear about us? And how did you get to us? All these different things that lead into helping us make better decisions. A lot of data. It's simple. It's as simple as asking a question, takes about 2 seconds, but a lot of people just don't do it. So we don't know, on the budgeting advertising side, we don't know where we really need to put our dollars because we don't know where all these people are coming from.
Yeah, 100%. And when we look at the numbers, like let's say we're looking at cost of sales and we've established that it's too high, to be honest, the first thing you're always jumping into is plan, because it's that, oh, okay, what business am I running again? What are my benchmarks? Like, you're going into just, let me just set the scene here, and that's what the planning is almost. Let me just set the scene. Let me scratch my head and remind myself, who's my target market again? Who do I want? So, and same with revenue. If we haven't hit that revenue goal, we're going into plan. If our wages are too high, we're going to start in plan. If our rent is too high as a percentage of turnover, even, we're going to make a plan to talk to our landlord or move. So, and then once that you've got that, what is it? Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe, something like that. The first action you take from the numbers is also always going to be sharpening that axe.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's good advice. Well, Jeannie, we certainly do appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else that you want to mention before we wrap up?
No, only that, look, I absolutely just am so passionate about giving small business owners something that they can take and use to make or save money straight away. And so if you please feel free, if you do have a look at our website, which is cloud9strategic.com.au, we do offer, and if you have a look at that one /strategy, you'll find links to register for our free webinars and do our scorecard, and just things that you can opt into that will educate you even further and help you further. We've also got lots of blogs, lots of tools and tips and hacks, because every business owner has to invest constantly in education, and there's lots of great free stuff out there. So just start investing in that education.
Yeah, and there's never been a better time to be in business, because we have so much data and information at our fingertips. We can do so much research. It's really never been a better time, but we have to make the time to take advantage of that, I think, is the big message too. So what is a what is a tool or a habit, something that you use in your daily life, professional or personal, that you feel adds a lot of value?
Yeah, so one that I definitely do. So it's actually around prioritizing. So I like to have. I love the number three, and I think a lot of people love the number three. It's easy, three things to do, three things to think about. Always be writing these things down. So I like to have a big picture, three focuses. So my number one focus, and it's something I ask everybody to consider putting first, is their health. So I put my health first, and that is mental, spiritual, and physical, those three things. My second focus is my beautiful little boy. So if I am healthy and at my best, I can give him my best.
Yeah.
And my third focus is my empire building. We are all building a little empire just for fun. Money is only the product of doing something really well. So when I have those three priorities, a couple of things happen. Number one, your health has to come first, so you're well enough to do everything. But I'm always able to ask myself, and they're written down and they're on my whiteboard, is my focus today in this moment around one of those things? And if it is, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to get things right, because I'm moving in the right direction.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that gets back to our planning. We need to think about what we really doing today, adding value. And is that where we need to be, spending our time and attention? So that's great. I love that. Well, Jeannie, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it. Again, tell us, who do you like to work with? How can you help them? And again, tell us again, how can they reach out and get a hold of you?
Yeah, lovely. So my absolute niche is working dads. I'm often working with men, and they are running service-based businesses. Trades are my absolute favorite. So your plumbers, your electricians, your trade businesses. Outside of that, other services. Under 10 on the team. So anywhere between your one-man band and 10 on the team. That's my absolute sweet spot niche. You can reach out to me by visiting my website, so cloud9strategic.com.au, and that's the number 9 in there. And if you pop a /strategy, we're going to have a nice page where you can opt into those free resources. And yeah, that's how you get in touch with me.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we hope that you have a wonderful week. We appreciate you starting it off with us and bringing this great information. Y'all go over, check out Jeannie's site, get a lot of good information. Let's dig into these numbers. And, we still have some time during this year to get out there and make a difference. We can end the year on a high note. And then once we're in the groove, we'll just keep it going into the next year. So never too late to get started. Let's jump out there and do that. So that's going to do it for another episode of the Business of Business podcast. Of course, I am your host, Roy. You can find us at www.thebusinessofbusinesspodcast.com. We're on all the major social media networks. We're on all the major podcast platforms, Stitcher, Google, iTunes, and Spotify. We are a video of this interview will also go up on our YouTube channel when it goes live. So until next time, thanks for listening. And again, take care of yourself and take care of your business.